There are stories all over the world of young women being locked up and kidnapped by men for their own torturous needs. But what if the kidnapper was your own mother, your own family? Many people dream of living a luxurious life and being born in a rich family. But what if your family wants to have absolute control over your life? Imagine how that would be. Your life would be miserable despite being the richest people in the world. Hello everyone, let's investigate here. Today we will be talking about a girl who was imprisoned by her family in an attic for 25 years. Aristocrat Blanche Monnier story may be over a century old, but that doesn't make it any less terrifying. On May 23, 1901, a French general received an anonymous letter full of scribbles, and it wrote, "Dear General, with all respect, I want to tell you about something very serious and terrifying. In Monnier Mansion, there was someone imprisoned in an attic, and the person is about to die of starvation. For the past 25 years, the person was locked in a room and went through torturous routines, and lived with feces and cockroaches. Please help her." The letter even claimed they could hear screams coming from closed windows. The general was shocked because he recognized the surname Monnier. They are one of the most respected noble families in France at that time. Louise Monnier is a well-respected Parisian aristocrat. She is 75 years old, widowed, has several real estate properties, and is extremely wealthy. She is well known in the upper class of Paris for her passion for philanthropy. She even won a community award in recognition of her generous donations to different charities and helping the poor. Louise has a son named Marcel Monnier, who performed well in school and is now a well-known lawyer. How in the world will this noble family get accused by such horrible things? The general was seriously disturbed by the content of the letter and immediately sent the Poitiers police to investigate. On the next day, the police arrived at Monnier's properties and explained to them about their visit. Marcel Monnier quickly turned them away and refused the police to enter their property. He thought the letter was a twisted prank and an insult to the Monnier family, but now the police became more suspicious. They entered the property by force and started a search. After a few hours, they found nothing. When the police were about to leave, one of them accidentally found a room with a locked door and could smell a stench of rotten food from the inside. So the police demanded Marcel to open the door, but he refused. Police then kicked the front door and immediately were hit with the smell coming from the room. The room was completely dark, with no sunlight, because the window was covered by heavy curtains. The police managed to pull the curtains to brighten up the room and were shocked by the sight they just witnessed. In the corner of the room, a naked woman was chained to the bed, lying on a rotten straw mattress covered by a dirty blanket. The mattress was soaked with urine and feces. Food scraps and excrement surrounded her body, and there were maggots and cockroaches crawling everywhere on the ground. The police could not believe their eyes, and it was even harder to believe every single word from the letter was real. This is the first time that Blanche Monnier has seen the sun in 25 years. She was so skinny that there was literally only skin and bone left on her body. The police were shocked by the horrible scene. They could not stay in the disgusting room for more than 5 minutes, but the woman has stayed for 25 years. Louise and Marcel sat in the corner quietly and remained composed, as they were expecting this day to come. Blanche was immediately taken to the hospital. After several medical treatments, she was found to weigh only 55 pounds. Hospital staff reported that Blanche was extremely malnourished, delirious, and even developed a special affection to her own excrement. Despite claims by Marcel that she was foul, angry, overly excited, and full of rage, Doctors noted that Blanche was calm, never wavering for a moment into fits of anger or excitement. The doctors have mentioned how incredible it is that she managed to survive in such an atrocious condition with no movement for so many years. Even in the entire 19th century in France, there has never been this kind of imprisonment, and this appalling atrocity actually happened in a noble mansion. Due to the seriousness of the case, the police started to question the Monnier family. After several confessions, the horrifying and devastating truth was finally revealed. The victim is Blanche Monnier, who mysteriously disappeared 25 years ago. The young and beautiful Blanche had many young men going after her. She was beautiful, kind, and did not have the arrogance of the many noble French at the time. Louise hoped that Blanche would choose a young and wealthy nobleman, someone who had the same social status as the Monnier family. Louise did not let Blanche to meet any guys on her own. Every single man who Blanche talked to was first filtered by her mother. Louise planned to choose Blanche's husband for her when the time was right. Blanche was rather stubborn though. She did not yield to her mother's authoritarianism and chose to seek for her own lover. In 1874, Blanche fell in love with an older attorney, Benjamin. Blanche was attracted to his humorous personality and his rich experience of the outside world. Who would have thought the love story of this sweet and young couple would turn into a tragedy later on? After 2 years, Louise found out about this secret underground relationship and demanded Blanche to break up with this penniless lawyer. But after 2 years of relationship, Blanche tasted the freedom to love. She refuses to comply. The neighbors saw Blanche sneaking out to see Benjamin at night, and some of them even started a rumor saying that Blanche was carrying a child of the poor. This false accusation definitely brought a negative reputation upon the Monniers family, and it finally reached Louise's bottom line. She cannot bear to hear any criticism on her family, so she'd rather destroy her own daughter than having a stain on her family's reputation. Louise plotted with her son to develop a plan to stop the marriage. During a summer night in 1876, Louise and Marcel dragged Blanche to the attic. Blanche was locked in the attic until she agreed to abandon the relationship. The mother thought at the time that the girl would relent and agree to her demands. Blanche begged her mother to release her, but still insisted on marrying Benjamin. Louise was furious, and she showed no mercy to her own daughter. She installed the thick curtains to block the sunlight and stopped cleaning the room for Blanche. She thought she would break Blanche by lowering her living condition. Blanche was hopeless, but still refused to comply. A few weeks passed, and Louise saw that Blanche insisted on her decision. She began to tell her friends in the community that Blanche had disappeared in the middle of the night, and she gave powerful performances with her fake crying. Soon, everyone was sold on the story, and slowly forgot about this angelic girl. Benjamin was baffled. He believed that Blanche would never leave him, at least not like this without any warnings. He would often go back to the spot where they had their first date and hope Blanche would come back, but the girl who he loved deeply never appeared again. In 1885, 9 years after Blanche's disappearance, Benjamin died because of depression. He missed her too much. And during all that time, the girl was confined in a lonely room, fed with scraps from the mother's table. Her only companions were the rats that gathered to eat the hard crust she threw upon the floor. And finally, Blanche broke down and lost her mind. Marcel obeyed his mother and told everyone the same story. For him and his mother, reputation is far more important to them. They could not afford to let the world know what really happened to Blanche. 25 years, 100 seasonal changes, and a total of 9,125 nights, Blanche was locked up alone in the attic. Cockroaches and mice might have been the only living creatures around her, until she was finally rescued in 1901. Blanche was 50 years old. Louise was arrested the next day and imprisoned at around 6 o'clock in the evening. When interrogated by the police, Louise claimed that Blanche brought this all upon herself. Being a woman with violent tendencies since her young age, Her brother also agreed that Blanche was already mentally ill when they locked her up, claiming that she could have left at any time. All she has to do was to abandon a penniless lawyer. But yet she still chose not to comply and escaped the torture chamber that her mother locked her in. A surging crowd gathered at the prison where Louise was in and shouted at her with hatred. Louise was immediately placed in an infirmary where she died 15 days later from a heart attack. She could not handle the stress. Marcel stood the trial alone, accused of being his mother's accomplice. The trial opened on October 7, 1901, and 4 days later, Marcel was found guilty and sentenced to 15 months in prison. The judgment on October 11th raised a pause in the courtroom, and outside on the palace square, the crowd showed their approval, screaming and shouting hostile threats at the convicted man. But let's not forget that Marcel was a lawyer and he knew his way around the law. He blamed everything on his mother. He was simply too afraid of his mom, so he had to do exactly what she said. Marcel immediately appealed the verdict, and in a judgment announced on November 20th, 1901, the court found that he had exercised no violence on the woman, and hence, he was acquitted and released from the jail. Until this day, we still don't know who wrote the anonymous letter. Someone guessed that it was a servant who had previously worked at the mansion, even though this letter eventually helped Blanche escape the hell she was in for 25 years. But all these countless and hopeless nights, no one will ever understand. Although Blanche did put on some weight, she never regained her sanity. She died in a psychiatric hospital in 1913, 12 years after she was discovered captive in her room. She never showed any sign of aggression. It seemed like she was still the same 25-year-old girl. The nurses reported that Blanche often said, "How lovely it is." Almost seems like she was describing a place. No one knew what she was describing. Maybe to Blanche, all she saw were the memories she had with Benjamin, full of joys and happiness, and she had forever paused these memory fragments in her mind.